10 years had passed since the Battle of Earth. The galaxy was a different place now. The scars of war had healed on the surface, but the changes underneath ran deep. Humanity had not just survived their trial by fire. They had transformed it into something greater. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Indomitable. He wore the uniform of a fleet admiral now, his chest decorated with ribbons from a dozen peacekeeping operations. Gray had crept into his hair and lines marked his face. War and leadership had aged him, but his eyes remained sharp. "Admiral, we're approaching the Kelveran system," his navigation officer reported. "The distress signal is getting stronger." Jake studied the tactical display. Another crisis, another species in trouble. This time it was a civil war on a distant world. One faction had called for council intervention. The other faction was threatening to use biological weapons if anyone interfered. It was a messy situation with no easy answers. "Open a channel to the council delegation ship," Jake ordered. "Let's coordinate our approach." A moment later, the face of Ambassador Zora appeared on his screen. The Mindari representative had become one of humanity's strongest allies on the council. She had been one of the few who had opposed the attack on Earth from the beginning. "Admiral Morrison," she greeted him. "I'm glad you're here. This situation requires a delicate touch. What's the latest?" "The rebel faction has seized control of the capital city. They're holding 2 million civilians hostage and threatening to release a plague if we intervene. The government forces are preparing to bomb the city to stop them, which would kill everyone inside." Jake frowned. "So we're trying to prevent genocide while stopping a biological attack. Another normal day in the galaxy?" "Indeed," Zora said with what might have been a smile. "I've come to appreciate human sarcasm. It helps in situations like this." Over the next several hours, Jake and the council team worked to defuse the crisis. They used a combination of diplomacy, threats, and creative problem-solving. Human Special Forces teams infiltrated the city through old sewer systems, something the rebels hadn't thought to guard because most species found such methods distasteful. Once inside, they neutralized the biological weapon stockpiles. At the same time, human negotiators worked with both sides to find a political solution. They drew on Earth's own bloody history of civil wars and peace processes. They knew what worked and what didn't because humanity had tried everything at least once. By the end of the day, a tentative ceasefire was in place. The biological weapons were secure, the hostages were free, and both factions had agreed to peace talks with neutral mediators. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it prevented a massacre. That counted as a win. Back on Earth, Lisa Chen stood in the Mars shipyards, but these weren't the desperate war factories of 10 years ago. These were centers of innovation and cooperation. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists, building ships that combined the best of multiple civilizations. Kevin Sanders joined her, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this. You've been here for 12 hours straight." "Thanks," Lisa said, accepting the cup gratefully. "We're trying to solve a power distribution problem on the new Explorer-class ships. The Council quantum drives are efficient, but they don't integrate well with our reactor design. Have you tried reversing the polarity?" Kevin suggested with a grin. Lisa laughed. "This isn't a science fiction show, Kevin, but actually you might be onto something. If we flip the power flow during the transition phase." They worked through the problem together, each bringing different expertise. This kind of collaboration had become common. Humans brought creativity and unorthodox thinking. Council species brought centuries of accumulated knowledge. Together, they achieved things neither could alone. President Helen Carter was finishing her final year in office. She had been president during humanity's darkest hour and had guided them through to a new era of cooperation. But she was tired. Leading a species through war and peace had taken its toll. She stood in her office looking at a picture on her wall. It showed the memorial ring orbiting Earth with all those names glowing softly. 78,000 dead. She thought about them every day. "Madam President," her aide announced, "the council delegation has arrived for your final joint address." Helen straightened her jacket and walked to the conference room. Arbiter Selmara was there, along with representatives from a dozen species. They stood when Helen entered, showing respect that had been earned through blood and determination. "Arbiter," Helen greeted her. "Thank you for coming." "I wouldn't miss this, Helen," Selmara said. They were on first-name terms now, after years of working together. "Your final address as president is a significant moment. They moved to the assembly hall, where representatives from across the galaxy waited. Helen stood at the podium looking out at the diverse crowd. Humans, crystalline beings, methane breathers in environmental suits, and dozens of other forms of life, all here together. 10 years ago, Helen began, the Council attacked Earth because they feared what we might become. They saw our rapid advancement as a threat. They thought containment was the only solution. They were wrong, she paused, letting her words sink in. But we were wrong too. In our anger and fear, we almost let hatred consume us. We almost became the very thing they feared, a violent, vengeful species focused only on revenge. Some of us wanted to strike back at every council world, to make them pay for every human life lost. We chose a different path, not because it was easy, but because it was right. We chose to prove that humanity's strength lies not in our weapons, but in our values. We chose to protect rather than punish, to build rather than destroy, to turn former enemies into partners. She looked directly at Selmara. It hasn't been easy. There are still people on Earth who haven't forgiven the Council. There are still families mourning their dead. The scars remain, but we're healing. Together. Helen pulled up a holographic display showing statistics. In the past 10 years, Human Council joint operations have stopped 43 conflicts before they escalated to war. We've protected 17 species from piracy and exploitation. We've shared medical advances that have saved billions of lives across the galaxy, and we've explored regions of space that were previously unknown. The Council feared that humanity would upset the galactic order. They were right. We have upset it, but not in the way they expected. We've challenged the status quo. We've asked difficult questions. We've pushed for change when change was needed. And in doing so, we've made the Council stronger, not weaker. The chamber erupted in applause. Even the species that had been skeptical of humanity 10 years ago were clapping. Helen felt a surge of emotion but kept her composure. After the address, she met privately with Selmara. The two leaders sat in comfortable chairs, finally able to speak freely without cameras or politics getting in the way. You've done well, Helen, Selmara said. Your species has exceeded every expectation. We had good teachers, Helen replied. You taught us what not to do by attacking us. Then you taught us how to do better by working with us. Selmara's crystalline form seemed to dim slightly. I still carry guilt for what the Council did. So many deaths, so much unnecessary suffering. So do I, Helen admitted. Every decision I made during that time led to someone dying. Human or Council member, they were all someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. I'll carry that weight for the rest of my life. But would you change anything? Selmara asked. Helen thought about it. If I could go back and prevent the war entirely? Yes, of course. But given the situation we were in, with the Council attacking us? No, we did what we had to do. We survived, and we turned survival into something meaningful. What will you do after you leave office? Rest, Helen said with a tired smile. Maybe write a book about these past 10 years. Spend time with my family. I've given everything to this job. It's time to be just Helen again, not President Carter. On the anniversary of the Battle of Earth, Jake Morrison made his annual pilgrimage to the Memorial Ring. He floated in a spacesuit close enough to touch the names. He found the ones he was looking for, crew members from the original Defiant who hadn't made it home. Amy Porter joined him. She was a captain now, commanding her own ship. You come here every year, she observed. I promised them I would, Jake said. After the first battle, when we barely escaped, I promised the ones who died that if I survived, I'd remember them. All of them. Do you think they'd be proud of what we've become? Jake looked at Earth below, peaceful and beautiful. I think they'd be amazed that we're still here. That we not only survived but thrived. That we took our worst moment and turned it into our greatest strength. Any regrets? Thousands, Jake admitted. But not about fighting. Never about fighting. They gave us no choice. My only regret is that so many had to die for us to earn the respect we should have had from the beginning. Around the galaxy, humanity's reputation had evolved. They were no longer seen as the young, dangerous species that needed containment. Now they were respected as fierce defenders, creative thinkers, and reliable partners. But they were also remembered as the species you never wanted to fight. Military academies across the Council taught courses on the Battle of Earth. They studied human tactics. The Council's massive fleet gathered at the edge of human space. 5,000 warships from every member species floated in perfect formation. It was the largest military force ever assembled in the history of the galaxy. Each ship was huge, powerful, and ready for battle. High Arbiter Zelthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment. He looked at the fleet around him and felt confident. Surely the humans would see this overwhelming force and surrender. They were reasonable beings. They would choose survival over pointless resistance. He opened a communication channel to Earth. Humans of Earth, this is your final warning. Turn off your weapons and prepare for peaceful occupation. If you resist, we will use overwhelming force against you. The response came from Admiral Kate Sullivan. She was speaking from the orbital defense station above Earth. Her voice was cold and hard. This is Admiral Sullivan of Earth Defense Command. You came to our home with weapons ready and threats on your lips. You are not welcome here. Leave now, or we will force you to leave. Zelthar's crystalline features became hard. Very well. You have chosen extinction. All ships move forward. Target their orbital platforms first, then prepare to... He never finished his sentence. The asteroid belt exploded. Hundreds of asteroids burst apart at the same moment. Each one had been filled with a fusion bomb. The wave of shrapnel and radiation tore through the front of the Council fleet. 50 ships disappeared in the first 30 seconds. Just gone. Erased from existence, evasive maneuvers. Zelthar shouted, but it was too late. The trap had been sprung perfectly. The asteroids hadn't just exploded outward randomly. Humans had calculated exactly where each piece of shrapnel would go. They had created a kill zone. Pieces of rock moving at incredible speeds shredded through shields and hulls like they were paper. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant, now part of Earth's defensive fleet. He watched the destruction with grim satisfaction. All ships attack! Show them what we're made of! 200 human warships surged forward. They were outnumbered 25-1, but they had something the Council didn't have: desperation and creativity. The human ships fought like nothing the Council had ever seen before. They used the debris field as cover, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. They didn't waste shots. Every attack targeted specific systems, trying to cripple rather than destroy, creating more chaos. When ships were damaged too badly to fight, their crews aimed them at Council vessels and rammed them, sacrificing themselves to take out ships 10 times their size. Chris Palmer piloted the Defiant through a storm of weapons fire. Explosions lit up space all around them. "Captain, 3 Council destroyers are chasing us." "Take us through the debris field, full speed." "Greg, get ready with our surprise." Greg Hayes smiled at his weapons station. Deploying drones now. The Defiant released a swarm of small drones. Each one was no bigger than a fighter ship. The 3 Council destroyers ignored them, focusing only on the bigger target. That was their fatal mistake. The drones attached themselves to the enemy hulls and activated their special weapons, quantum destabilizers. The 3 Council destroyers simply stopped existing in normal space. Their molecules scattered across 17 different dimensions. The screams of their crews echoed briefly on quantum frequencies before fading into silence. The nearby Council ships pulled back in horror. What kind of weapon was this? All across the battlefield, similar nightmares unfolded. Earth's defense satellites revealed themselves. They weren't simple weapons platforms. They were massive railguns that could launch projectiles at nearly the speed of light. Each shot carried the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. Council ships that had seemed invincible suddenly had holes punched through them. The Council's huge numerical advantage started to shrink. They had expected a quick victory against a weaker enemy. Instead, they were losing ships by the dozen. The humans fought with a ferocity that terrified them. On the lunar surface, Lisa Chen was in charge of humanity's most ambitious weapon, a gravitational wave generator. It could create localized distortions in space-time itself. As Council ships passed near the moon, gravity suddenly inverted. The ships were crushed under their own mass, crumpling like tin cans. "This is insane." One of her technicians shouted over the noise of the generator. "We're using physics as a weapon. Tell me about it after we survive." Lisa yelled back, adjusting the targeting controls. High Arbiter Zelthar watched his tactical display with growing horror. They had lost 300 ships in just the first hour. 300! Against a species they had dismissed as primitive children playing with technology they didn't understand. "Pull back to maximum weapons range," he ordered. "We'll bombard them from a safe distance," but even that didn't work well. Human missiles were small, fast, and equipped with artificial intelligence. They were nearly impossible to intercept. They swarmed council ships like angry insects, overwhelming their defense systems through sheer numbers. And then the humans deployed their most terrible weapon of all, volunteers who had chosen to die. Small craft appeared, barely more than engines with warheads attached. Each one was piloted by a human who had decided that Earth's survival was worth more than their own life. They dove into the council formation like meteors. Each pilot chose their target carefully.
Each death took a council ship with them. They're insane!
Zelthar's tactical officer shouted. They're killing themselves on purpose. Because they know what we plan to do to their planet, Zelthar said quietly. He felt something he hadn't felt in centuries, fear. We didn't come here to fight soldiers. We created monsters who are willing to die to protect their home. The battle raged for 3 full days. Space around Earth became a graveyard of burning ships and floating debris. The Council's huge advantage in numbers slowly pushed back Earth's defenses, but the cost was staggering. For every human ship destroyed, 5 Council vessels were lost. For every orbital defense platform eliminated, 50 Council soldiers died in the vacuum of space. Human pilots flew until their ships fell apart. Human soldiers defended positions until they had no ammunition left, then used whatever they could find as weapons. Human scientists activated experimental weapons even when they knew it might kill them. The Council had never seen anything like it. On the second day of battle, a Council battleship broke through the defense line and fired on one of Earth's orbital cities. 10,000 civilians died instantly. The human response was immediate and terrible. Every human ship in range converged on that battleship. They tore it apart piece by piece, ignoring the damage they took. When it was over, nothing remained of the battleship but debris. The humans had made their point. Hurt our civilians and we will make you pay 100-fold. By the third day, the Council fleet had broken through most of the orbital defenses. Earth lay exposed below them, blue and green and vulnerable. They could see the cities, the oceans, the clouds. They could end this war with one massive bombardment. Zelthar prepared to give the order. His finger hovered over the control. But he hesitated. They had lost 1,900 ships, nearly 40% of their entire fleet. 40%! And the human resistance hadn't weakened at all. If anything, it had become more fierce. High Arbiter, his communication officer, called out. We're receiving a transmission from Earth. Admiral Kate Sullivan's face appeared on the screen. Behind her, the command center was damaged. Fires were still burning. Her uniform was torn and stained with blood. But her eyes were clear and absolutely defiant. You can destroy our orbital defenses, she said calmly. You can bombard our planet from space. You might even kill most of us. But you cannot kill us all, and the survivors will never forgive you. Never. We'll hide in our cities, in our tunnels, in caves if we have to. We'll rebuild in secret, and then we'll come for you. We'll hunt every single species in the Council across the galaxy. We'll make you pay for every human life you took. We'll become your nightmare. She leaned forward, and Zelthar saw something in her eyes that chilled him to his core. Or you can withdraw now. Leave our system. Never come back. And maybe, just maybe, we'll forget this ever happened. Maybe we'll let you live in peace. The choice is yours, Arbiter. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. Zelthar stared at the screen. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. He looked at the tactical display. 1,900 ships lost. Thousands of crew members dead. And below, a planet full of humans who had just proven they would rather die than surrender. He thought about Admiral Sullivan's words. If they bombarded Earth, some humans would survive. They would hide, rebuild, and spend generations hunting the Council across the stars. Every Council world would live in fear. Every Council ship would have to watch for human revenge. Was it worth it? All ships, Zelthar said slowly. Withdraw from the system. We're going home. But sir, his tactical officer started. That's an order. Zelthar snapped. We came here to neutralize a threat. Instead, we've created an enemy that will haunt us forever if we don't stop now. Withdraw. Immediately. The Council fleet began to pull back. Slowly at first, then faster. They left behind the wreckage of 1,900 warships and countless dead. As they retreated into hyperspace, one thought echoed through Zelthar's mind. They had come to extinguish a fire. 3 months after the battle, a small shuttle approached the neutral space station on the border between human and Council territory. Inside were 3 humans, President Helen Carter, Admiral Kate Sullivan, and Captain Jake Morrison. They were all in formal dress uniforms, but each wore a sidearm. The message was clear. We come in peace, but we're ready for anything. On the other side of the docking bay, Arbiter Selmara waited with her own small delegation. She had chosen her representatives carefully, species that had opposed the war from the beginning, species that might still have a chance at peace with humanity. Helen stepped off the shuttle first. She looked at the alien leader with careful eyes. Selmara extended a crystalline appendage, and what she had learned was the human gesture of greeting. Helen hesitated for just a moment, then shook it. President Carter, Selmara began, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer our deepest apologies for the unprovoked attack on your species. We allowed fear to override wisdom. We acted without true understanding, and we have paid dearly for that mistake, as have you. Helen's face remained neutral. An apology is nice, Arbiter. But apologies don't bring back the 78,000 people you killed. They don't rebuild our destroyed colonies. They don't heal the wounds you've inflicted on our species. No, they don't, Selmara agreed. Nothing can undo what was done. But perhaps we can work together to ensure such a tragedy never happens again. Not to humanity. Not to any species. And what exactly are you proposing? Kate asked. Her voice was hard and suspicious. Selmara pulled up a holographic display. Full membership in the Galactic Council for Humanity. Not as subordinates or junior members, but as equals. You would have the same voting rights as any other species. More importantly, you would have veto power over any military actions proposed by the Council. Never again could the Council declare war on a member species without unanimous consent. Jake stepped forward. That sounds good on paper. But what do you want in return? Nothing in politics is free. You're right, Selmara admitted. We want several things. First, we want your knowledge, your creativity, your unique way of solving problems. In just 70 years of space travel, you've developed technologies we never imagined. We want to learn from you and share our own knowledge in return. She pulled up more displays. Second, we want your help maintaining peace in the galaxy. There are regions where piracy is common, where weaker species are exploited. Your military capabilities, combined with Council resources, could help protect those who cannot protect themselves. You want us to be your attack dogs, Kate said flatly. No, Selmara replied. We want you to be our partners in keeping peace. There's a difference. You would have full say in any operation. You could refuse any mission you felt was unjust. This would be a partnership, not servitude. Helen considered this. What else? We're prepared to provide reparations for the damage caused to your worlds. Materials, technology, whatever you need to rebuild. We're also prepared to share defensive technology that has been restricted to Council members only. Shields, weapons, detection systems, everything you need to ensure Earth can defend itself against any threat. Even threats from the Council? Jake asked pointedly. Especially threats from the Council, Selmara said. We know we've lost your trust. These measures are designed to ensure you never have to fear us again. You'll have the ability to defend yourselves against anyone, including us. The negotiations continued for 3 weeks. Every detail was argued over, examined, and debated. The humans were careful and suspicious. They demanded clear terms, explicit protections, and verification methods. The Council representatives had to prove every claim, explain every clause, and accept human modifications to nearly every agreement. But slowly, an accord took shape. The Accords of Terra, they called it. It was unlike any treaty the Council had ever signed. It gave a single species rights and protections that no other member enjoyed. But the Council had learned an expensive lesson. Humanity was not like other species. They needed different handling. The treaty included several key points. First, humanity would join the Council as a full member with veto power over military actions. Second, the Council would pay massive reparations to rebuild damaged human facilities. Third, all restricted defensive technologies would be shared with Earth. Fourth, human ships would have the right to travel anywhere in Council space without restriction. Fifth, and perhaps most importantly, any future conflict between humanity and the Council would be subject to binding arbitration by neutral species. When the treaty was finally ready, both sides signed it in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. Helen Carter's hand was steady as she put her signature on the document. Selmara's crystalline form seemed to glow a little brighter. History was being made. But the signing of a treaty didn't mean trust returned overnight. On Earth, many people remained angry. They had lost loved ones in the battle. They had seen their world attacked. Words on paper couldn't erase those memories. Lisa Chen attended a memorial service for colleagues who had died in the Mars shipyards during a council bombing run. 20 engineers had been killed when a damaged council ship crashed into the facility. She stood with their families, listening to names being read aloud. "How do we just forgive this?" someone asked her. "How do we work with the people who killed our friends?" "We don't forgive," Lisa said quietly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But we can choose to move forward. We can choose to build something better." That's what they died for, wasn't it? A future for humanity? It doesn't feel right. No, Lisa agreed. It doesn't. But sometimes the right choice doesn't feel good. It just feels necessary. Across the galaxy, other species watched humanity's integration into the Council with interest. Some were inspired. If humans could stand up to the Council and win concessions, maybe they could too. Others were wary. Humans had proven themselves dangerous. What would they do with their new power? The first test came sooner than expected. A pirate fleet was raiding a defenseless colony world on the edge of Council space. The species living there had no military. They were artists and philosophers, completely unprepared for violence. They called for help. The Council convened an emergency session. Selmara looked at the human delegation. "This is the kind of situation where we would value your assistance. The pirates are well-armed and numerous. Our nearest fleet is weeks away, but your ships are closer." Helen looked at her military advisors. Kate pulled up tactical information. "We have a battle group in the area, the U.S. Indomitable and 5 support ships. They could reach the colony in 2 days. What do you recommend?" Helen asked. "The pirates are preying on the weak," Kate said. "They're exactly the kind of threat we built our fleet to stop. Not Council aggression, but real evil. I say we respond." Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral and given command of the First Fleet, agreed. "This is what we're supposed to be good at, right? Protecting those who can't protect themselves? Let's show the galaxy that humanity stands for something." The decision was made. The human battle group changed course and headed for the colony at maximum speed. When they arrived, they found the pirates in the middle of raiding the main settlement. The lead pirate ship was 3 times the size of the Indomitable. Jake opened a communication channel. "Pirate vessels, this is Admiral Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are ordered to cease your attack and withdraw immediately." "This colony is under our protection," the pirate captain laughed. "Earth, never heard of you. This isn't your business, little ship. Run away before you get hurt." Jake smiled grimly. "You were warned." He switched to fleet-wide communications. "All ships, engage. Show them why the Council learned to fear us." The battle was brief and brutal. The pirates had never faced human tactics before. They expected a straightforward fight. Instead, the human ships split up, using the colony's orbital structures as cover. They hit the pirate ships with precision strikes, targeting engines and weapons. When the pirates tried to form up for a coordinated defense, human missiles swarmed them from multiple angles. Within 20 minutes, 3 pirate ships were crippled and drifting. The rest were running for their lives. The human ships pursued them to the edge of the system, making sure they understood the message. This colony was off limits. The grateful colonists couldn't thank the humans enough. They offered food, art, and resources. Jake politely declined most of it. "We didn't do this for payment. We did it because it was right." News of the battle spread quickly. Humanity's first action as a council member had been to protect a defenseless species from pirates. Not to seek advantage or resources, but simply because it was the right thing to do. The gesture had impact across the galaxy. Species that had been wary of humans began to reconsider. These weren't conquerors or aggressors. These were protectors. Maybe there was hope for this new partnership after all. Back on Earth, construction of the memorial was complete. A ring of names orbited the planet, visible from the surface on clear nights. 78,000 names glowed softly in the darkness. Jake Morrison attended the dedication ceremony with thousands of others. Helen Carter gave a speech. "We remember them not just for how they died, but for what they died for. They gave their lives so that humanity could remain free." Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the Defiant. He was the captain, and today was supposed to be just another normal day in space. For 15 years, humans had been working with aliens from all over the galaxy. They traded goods, shared science, and everything seemed peaceful. Earth finally had friends among the stars. Amy Porter sat at the communications desk, She looked worried. "Captain, there's an important message coming from the council station." Jake fixed his uniform and stood up straight. "Show me." The screen lit up. A tall alien made of crystal appeared. His name was Zelthar, and he was the leader of the Galactic Council. But today he didn't look friendly. His face was cold and hard. "Captain Morrison," Zelthar said, "the Galactic Council has made a decision. We have decided that humanity is too dangerous. All human ships must turn off their weapons right now. You will be placed under quarantine immediately." Jake felt his heart race. "What are you talking about? Dangerous? We haven't done anything wrong. Your species grows too fast. You learn too quickly. You are adapting in ways that scare us. It took our species thousands of years to develop our technology. You did it in just 3 generations. The Council has decided you must be stopped before you become a threat to everyone. But we've been peaceful. We've helped everyone we could. This is not a request, Captain. It is an order. You have 1 hour to surrender your ship." The screen went dark. Greg Hayes looked up from his station. He was in charge of weapons. "Captain, I'm seeing something on the sensors. Council warships are appearing all around us. A lot of them." Jake's jaw tightened. The Defiant was built for science and exploration. She had weapons to defend herself, but not enough to fight a whole fleet. They were surrounded and outnumbered. "Connect me to Admiral Kate Sullivan at Fleet Command," Jake ordered. A moment later, the Admiral's face appeared. Behind her, people were running around in panic. "Morrison, every human ship in Council space is being surrounded. They're doing this to all of us at once. They're calling it Operation Containment. Admiral, what should we do?" Kate's eyes were hard and angry. "Don't shoot first. But if they attack you, fight back. We're bringing everyone home to Earth. The Council just made the biggest mistake of their lives." "What do you mean?" "They forgot something important, Captain. When you corner a dangerous animal, it fights harder than ever. Get your people home safely." "Sullivan out," Jake turned to his crew. "You heard her. Set a course for Earth. Go as fast as this ship can fly. And charge up all weapons. If they want to fight, we'll show them what humans can do." The Defiant's engines roared to life. The ship jumped forward. Immediately, the Council ship started shooting. Bright energy beams cut through space, but Chris Palmer, the pilot, was already moving the ship out of the way. "Fire back," Jake commanded. "Aim for their weapon systems. We're not trying to start a war, but we're not going to die here either." The Defiant's guns fired with thunder. Missiles shot out from the ship. 2 Council ships took heavy damage. Their shields broke and their weapons stopped working. The other ships stopped for just a moment. They seemed surprised. That was all Jake needed. Jump to hyperspace. Reality twisted around them. The Defiant escaped into hyperspace, leaving the confused Council fleet behind. They were heading home. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. War was coming. Back at Earth, emergency meetings started immediately. President Helen Carter stood before the world government. Her face appeared on every screen across the planet. "My fellow humans," she began. "Today, the Galactic Council declared us their enemies. They fear us. They fear our potential, our creativity, and our refusal to give up. They gave us a choice: surrender to quarantine or be destroyed." People in the room shouted angrily. Helen raised her hand for silence. "They made a big mistake. They think we're just primitives who got lucky and made it to space. They don't know what we really are. We are the children of survivors. Our ancestors crossed huge oceans in wooden boats. They split the atom. They walked on the moon before we even knew aliens existed. We survived extinction events, world wars, and pandemics. We're still here." She paused. "The Council gave us 1 month to surrender. We won't use that month to prepare for surrender. We'll use it to prepare for survival. When the Council fleet comes to Earth, they'll learn what happens when you threaten humanity's home." Admiral Kate Sullivan stepped forward. "We're activating every defense system we have. The shipyards on Mars are working day and night. Every factory, every resource, every person who can help is now part of the war effort." Paul Richardson from Defense Research joined them. "The Council thinks they know what we can do. They've seen our trade ships. They've seen our exploration vessels. They haven't seen what we've been building in secret. They're about to learn. All across Earth and the human colonies, people got ready for war. Factories that made cars started making weapons instead. Scientists stopped their research and started building war machines. Old soldiers came back to serve. Regular people volunteered to fight. On Mars, Lisa Chen was in charge of building new warships. These weren't pretty exploration ships. These were weapons designed for one purpose: war. They took every lesson from every fight in human history and put it into these ships. How many can we finish in 4 weeks? Her boss asked. Lisa checked her computer. At this speed, we can make 200 warships. But that won't be enough against the Council's huge fleet. They don't need to be enough, said a voice behind her. Admiral Sullivan walked up. They just need to make the Council bleed. Fear is a weapon too. We're going to teach these aliens what real fear means. In the asteroid belt, mining crews worked without stopping. They weren't digging for ore anymore. They were filling asteroids with huge bombs, creating the biggest minefield ever made by humans. Amy Porter was now working at Earth Defense Command. She was setting up the orbital defense platforms. We're turning our whole solar system into a fortress, she told her team. Every moon, every asteroid, every space station will be a gun pointed at anyone stupid enough to attack our home. Dr. Kevin Sanders and Dr. Julie Morgan led a team building new weapons. They took alien technology and mixed it with human ideas. They created something terrifying. A weapon that could destroy a ship's hyperspace drive while it was traveling, tearing it apart across multiple dimensions. Is it ready? Kate Sullivan asked when she came to check. Kevin nodded. We've never tested it on a real target. The computer says it will be horrible. Good, Kate said coldly. They wanted to see what monsters humans can be. Let's show them. As the month went by, the Council got reports from their spies. What they learned scared them. Humanity wasn't getting ready to surrender. They were getting ready for total war. High Arbiter Zelthar read the reports. He felt uneasy. They're building weapons we banned 10,000 years ago. They never signed our warfare agreements, his advisor said. Technically, they're not breaking any laws. Because we never thought anyone would be crazy enough to turn quantum mechanics into weapons, or to use suicide attacks, or to weaponize entire planets, Zelthar said. Maybe we should reconsider this. It's too late, the advisor said. We've already committed to this. If we back down now, we look weak. Every rebellious species in the galaxy will see that humans made us blink. We have to go through with it. Zelthar knew it was a mistake, but pride and politics forced them forward. The Council fleet would launch in 1 week. On Earth, President Helen Carter watched the sun set over the ocean. Jake Morrison stood beside her. He had been called back to help plan Earth's defense. Do you think we can win? She asked quietly. Jake thought about it. Against their full strength? No, but we don't need to win completely. We need to make victory cost them so much that they'll wish they never heard of Earth. We need to hurt them so badly that every species in the galaxy will think twice before threatening humans again. Helen nodded. Then let's make sure they remember this lesson forever. For Earth, Jake said. For humanity, Helen replied. The countdown to war had begun. The wreckage floated in space around Earth like a steel graveyard. 1,900 destroyed Council warships. Pieces of metal, frozen bodies, and debris stretched across millions of miles. The survivors on both sides couldn't believe what had just happened. On Earth, people stood in the streets and cried. Some cried from relief that they were still alive. Others cried for the 78,000 humans who had died defending their home. Cities had damage from falling debris. 3 orbital colonies were completely destroyed. But Earth still existed. Humanity still existed. High Arbiter Zelthar stood before the Emergency Council session. His crystalline body seemed dull and lifeless. Around him, representatives from 200 species filled the chamber. They were angry, very angry. You told us humanity was a small threat, Ambassador Krelvin hissed. The Thaxian representatives' scales were dark with fury. You said they would surrender within days. Instead, we lost almost half of our combined fleet. The intelligence reports said they were weak. Zelthar tried to defend himself. They had only been in space for 70 years. How could we know they would fight like this? You didn't know because you were arrogant. Representative Zora interrupted. She was from the Mindari Collective, a species known for their logic and careful thinking. You saw a young species and thought they were weak. You didn't study their history. You didn't try to understand what kind of beings they really are. She activated a holographic display. It showed Earth's history. This species went from inventing powered flight to landing on their moon in just 66 years. They split the atom before they even left their planet. They survived a global pandemic that killed millions and came back stronger. They fought wars so terrible they created weapons that could destroy their entire world. Then they chose not to use them. The display changed to show footage from the battle. Human pilots ramming their ships into council vessels, soldiers defending their positions even after being mortally wounded, scientists activating experimental weapons knowing they might die. This is a species that invented the concept of mutually assured destruction, Zora continued. They looked at the end of the world and said, if we die, we're taking everyone with us. They made peace with their own extinction as long as their enemies died too. And you thought they would simply surrender when threatened? More images appeared. The quantum weapons tearing ships apart across dimensions. The asteroids turned into mines. The moon itself turned into a weapon. Suicide attacks that came wave after wave, never stopping. You didn't attack a weak species, Zora said. You attacked a species of survivors who have been preparing for extinction since they developed consciousness. You attacked beings who see death as just another obstacle to overcome. You attacked humans and they showed you what that word really means. The chamber fell silent. Every representative there had lost ships. Every species had dead to mourn. And for what? To stop a species that had been peacefully trading with them for 15 years. Back on Earth, Jake Morrison and Kate Sullivan stood in the ruins of the orbital defense station. Around them, repair crews worked to fix the damage. The station had taken dozens of direct hits but was still standing. Barely. Was it worth it? Jake asked quietly. Kate looked down at Earth below. The planet was still beautiful despite the scars. We're alive. We're free. That's what matters. They'll never trust us now. Good, Kate said firmly. Trust is for friends. What we have now is something better. Respect born from fear. Every species in the galaxy now knows one thing about humanity. We will fight to the last person rather than submit to anyone. That's the best protection we could ask for. But 78,000 people died, and their deaths bought us a future, Kate replied. Her voice was hard but not cold. Every one of them knew what they were fighting for. They knew the odds. They chose to stand and fight anyway. That's what makes us human. On Mars, Lisa Chen was compiling the final casualty reports. So many names. So many friends and colleagues who would never see another sunrise. She had worked alongside many of them in the shipyards. Now they were just names on a list. Kevin Sanders entered her office. He looked exhausted. He hadn't slept in 3 days. The council has formally withdrawn their containment order. They're requesting peace negotiations. After killing 78,000 of us? Lisa's voice was bitter. After trying to destroy our entire species? They're afraid, Kevin said simply. Our quantum weapons scared them. Our willingness to die scared them. The fact that we turned our entire solar system into a weapon scared them. They thought they were fighting a war. We showed them we were fighting for our very existence. There's a big difference. So what happens now? Now we decide if we can forgive them, Kevin said, or if we want revenge. President Helen Carter addressed the world from a temporary command center. Much of the government district had been damaged during the battle when debris from destroyed ships rained down from orbit. My fellow humans, she began, we have achieved a great victory, but it came at a terrible price. 78,000 of our brothers and sisters gave their lives to defend our freedom. We will never forget them. We will honor them forever, and we will never forgive those who forced this war upon us. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The council has requested peace negotiations. They want to end this conflict. They're offering to withdraw completely and leave us alone. My question to all of humanity is this. Can we make peace with those who tried to exterminate us? Should we? The question sparked debates across the planet. Some people called for continued war. They wanted revenge for every human death. They wanted to see the council species pay for what they had done. Others, tired of death and destruction, wanted peace. They had families they wanted to go home to. They had lives they wanted to rebuild. But there was one thing everyone agreed on. Humanity would never be vulnerable again. Never. They would build more ships, develop more weapons, create more defenses. No one would ever threaten Earth like this again. Something strange started happening across the galaxy in the weeks after the battle. Species that had stayed neutral during the conflict began reaching out to Earth. Some offered trade deals on favorable terms. Some offered alliances. Some simply wanted to understand the species that had bloodied the Council's nose. Greg Hayes, promoted to captain after the battle, met with representatives from the Korath Alliance. They were a group of independent worlds that had long resented Council control, but were too weak to resist. You did what we never could, the the Korath ambassador told him. The alien's 6 eyes gleamed with admiration. You stood up to the council and survived. Many of us are wondering if it's time for us to be independent too. The council will see that as rebellion, Greg warned. They might attack you like they attacked us, let them try. After what you did to their fleet, they'll think twice before starting another war. You've changed the balance of power in this galaxy, Captain. The age of council dominance is over. They're no longer invincible. You proved that. Back on Earth, construction began on a memorial in orbit. It would be visible from the surface, a ring of names that would orbit the planet forever. 78,000 names would be engraved on its surface. Each name represented a life cut short, a future stolen, a family broken. Jake Morrison visited the construction site. Amy Porter joined him, her arm still in a medical brace from injuries she suffered during the battle. They floated in spacesuits looking at the partially completed structure. Do you think we did the right thing? Amy asked. All those deaths, both ours and theirs. Was it worth it? Jake thought about the question for a long time. The council gave us 2 choices, surrender our freedom or fight for it. We chose to fight. I don't know if that makes it right, but it makes it necessary. We did what we had to do to survive. And what happens now? Now we rebuild, Jake said, looking at Earth below. We prepare. We make sure no one ever puts us in this position again. And we remember everyone who died to give us this chance. Do you think the council learned their lesson? I think they learned that humans are not to be trifled with, Jake replied. We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest. We don't have the best technology. But we have something they don't. We're willing to do whatever it takes to survive. That makes us dangerous. On the council homeworld, Arbiter Selmara reviewed the battle reports. She had replaced Zelthar as the new High Arbiter. The council needed someone who understood that the old ways weren't working anymore. She looked at the numbers again. 1,900 ships destroyed. Thousands of crew members dead. Billions of credits wasted. And for what? To contain a species that had been peaceful until attacked? We need to make this right, she told her advisors. This war should never have happened. We let fear and arrogance guide us instead of wisdom. How do we make it right? One advisor asked. The humans will never forgive us. Maybe not, Selmara agreed. But we can try to build something better. We can offer them a real place in the galactic community. We can show them that not all council members supported this war. We can try to turn enemies into allies. That will be very difficult. Yes, it will be, Selmara said. But the alternative is living with an enemy who has proven they can hurt us badly. An enemy who will never forget what we did.